will now come to order. The clerk being absent this evening, this meeting must elect a temporary clerk. I recognize Ms. Brewer for a nomination. Hopefully Ms. Brewer knows we're doing this.
Ms. Brewer has her script because she didn't know this. All right. I nominate Susan Audette as temporary clerk.
The nomination has been seconded. Hearing no other nominations, I declare the nominations closed and request that Ms. Brewer cast a single ballot for Sue Audette.
On behalf of town meeting, I cast a single ballot for Sue Audette.
Sue Audette has been elected temporary clerk for the session of the 2015 annual town meeting. Ms. Audette, do you swear that you will faithfully and impartially perform the duties of town clerk? Say, I do.
I do.
Thank you. It's come to my attention that we may have a newly elected town meeting member who has not yet been sworn in. Is that the case? Are there any elected town meeting members who have not yet been sworn in? I don't see any, so we may continue. Schedule reminder, if we need to go to an 8th session, it will happen on Wednesday, May 20th, and we also have a week from Wednesday, May 27th, scheduled as well if we need to continue beyond. Important notice about tally cards. When you checked in on Monday, you received a second set of tally cards numbered 7 through 12. If you didn't receive them on Monday, you should have received them this evening. These cards do not have names printed on them. If we have a tally vote, you will need to legibly sign your card before voting, and the legibly part is important. If you forgot your card this evening, please go to the check-in table now to get a blank set. And I'll give this reminder again if and when we have a tally vote. The seats on the floor of the auditorium may be occupied only by town meeting members, except for the front row, which may be used by members of the press and members of town committees and town staff participating in the presentation or discussion of articles. Such persons must wear non-voter stickers, which are available at the check-in table. Spectators and town residents who are not town meeting members may be seated in the bleachers at the rear of the auditorium. New information for town meeting members can be found on the back table to my left. Old information can be found on the table to my right. If you wish to speak, you must raise your hand and be recognized. When appropriate, please hold up a green or red card to indicate pro or con on the issue. When you are called on, please first state your name and precinct. If you forget, I will interrupt and ask you to do so. If you need more than 3 minutes or more than 5 when speaking to a motion, you must request additional time before speaking, and town meeting will vote on your request. If you are speaking from the floor, please speak into a microphone that will be provided once you are recognized. This will allow the viewers outside the auditorium to hear you. The microphone will be on when it is handed to you. Please hold it close to your mouth when you speak. Non-members who wish to speak should stand at the rear of the right-hand aisle. Any registered voter of the town of Amherst who is recognized by the moderator may speak without special permission. Others may speak with the permission of a majority. If you are coming forward and you have a document to display in the overhead projector, please let our IT person know when you first reach the podium, and he will switch the screen settings. If you're making an amendment to a motion, the amendment must be presented in writing with 4 copies submitted to the front table. Procedural motions, such as a motion to refer or a motion to dismiss, do not need to be presented in writing. If you make any motion from the floor, it must be the first thing you do after you've been recognized and have identified yourself. You cannot speak first and then make a motion. If you've not already done so, please check your cell phone and make sure it is silenced or off. If at any point in time you are confused about the proceedings, it is appropriate to call a point of order and ask for a clarification. It is also always okay to phone me, send me an email, or see me prior to town meeting if you need an explanation of any kind. I would like to remind town meeting members of a few additional points. Murmuring and other audible reactions to speakers are not permitted in town meeting. You may disagree with policies and decisions, but you must do so respectfully. I think we can all agree that all town meeting members, board members, and committee members have the best interests of the town at heart. I did notice a few points of order at our last session, and I wanted to make a few comments on that. I will listen carefully and respectfully to any point of order that is made. I will make a ruling and then move on. If you have a question about a ruling, you are welcome to contact me outside of town meeting for further discussion. New England town meeting rules are very clear that the ruling of the moderator on a point of order is not subject to debate. A point of order is one of a very small number of motions that can interrupt the speaker. As such, it should be made with great care. We now move to Article 25, and I have a quick note on that. Just want to point out to people before we recognize a motion or a speaker, there's a discrepancy between the wording in Article 25 and the wording in Zoning Bylaw 3.325 that Article 25 wishes to revise. This is because the petitioner inadvertently referenced an older version of the bylaw when crafting the article. I have ruled the discrepancies to be Scrivener's errors and will allow the motion that you see before you. After the motion is made and seconded, we will display the zoning bylaw as it will be written if Article 25 passes. I now call on Mr. O'Connor to make a motion.
So I'm, Mr. Moderator, Vince O'Connor, Precinct 1. I move in terms of the article except to do the...
If you want, you can say except for what we see on the screen before us.
Yes, except for what the town meeting members see on the screen before you. And if the...
Good. So motion's been made and seconded. Would you like the town meeting to now see what the bylaw will look like?
There is that's what the article would look like, and I've provided a copy here
yes.
on the screen, and Mr. Malloy has kindly brought it up for the town meeting members.
Yeah, it's tricky because we do want to fit it all on the screen. Yeah. Let's do this. Let's do your screen version. I think it might be more readable. So we're going to switch. Here we go.
Okay.
So, and 4 and 5, items 3 and 4, which you see there aren't changed from the existing bylaw. So the important stuff is what you see in blue. So I think having this on the screen will be most helpful, I would say.
And if Mr. Moderator,
yeah.
If I could ask the Mr. Malloy, if in the second paragraph of number 2, there should be an asterisk in front of the word in.
Ah, yes, because that's what those two asterisks up there reference.
Right.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. I think we are all set, and you may now speak to your motion.
Okay, thank you.
Point of order, Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
Can we magnify that at all?
As soon as we... Okay, the question was, can we magnify this? And we can try a little. We're going to run out of screen space, so we have to do the best compromise between magnification and fitting it on the screen. So I think what you see there is about as good as it gets. I hear another point of order, but wait for a microphone because people can't hear you otherwise. Raise your hand, yeah.
Jerry Weiss, Precinct 8. The warrant I have in front of me looks to be the same as what's on the screen. Is that right? It doesn't look.
No, there are
subtle differences.
There are subtle differences, and that's why I ruled them as Scrivener's errors.
Because it's not all that's in blue. A lot of what's in blue is on this warrant.
Okay. So,
wait.
Mr. Moderator, if I could explain,
yes, and this counts as part of the portable. This isn't not speaking to the motion yet.
Okay.
You can try and explain.
So, in answer to the question, the two things that were added with regard to the Scrivener's error have to do with the introductory paragraph, which was not proposed to be changed, and which is viewable under some things, but we're not voting on anything in it. The second changes are that if if you look on your warrant, there were 5 SPs, none of which were highlighted with an asterisk. And if you look on the proposed motion here, there are only 2 SPs, and those are highlighted with asterisks, and the appropriate paragraph under number 2 has an asterisk placed in front of it so that the town meeting members can understand that those SPs refer particularly to that paragraph.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. You may now speak to your motion.
Okay. So I think that with respect to the planning board report to town meeting, that the issues about that we've just talked about for a few minutes have been addressed. So we have a motion on the floor that seeks to add special permit requirements in the limited business district and the general business district under 2 very specific circumstances. But let me address the addition, the blue addition to the first paragraph, number 1. That has to do with requiring that certain parking requirements be taken from the rules and regulations and placed in the standards and conditions. Why is this? The reason is actually pretty straightforward, and it is under construction on Triangle Street. And there we had a building with 36 apartment units and 4 parking spaces, 2 of which were HP spaces and 2 were zip cars. And I guess everyone, all the cars related to the individuals there are going to be parked in various neighborhoods surrounding the building. So my view is that substantive issues like parking, even if the planning board does not choose to use its waiver requirements, waiver rights, and waive the municipal parking district exemptions, which they have a right to do, and say, this building requires too much parking and there's too little parking available, that we should know during the hearings what the parking requirements are, and therefore there should be the kind of details, factual details presented to the planning board, not vague generalities that have to do with the fact that young people don't own automobiles. The second reason is that substantive matters like parking belong in the zoning bylaw. They do not belong in the rules and regulations of the planning board because, 1, those are important issues, and 2, whereas the zoning bylaw only can be changed by town meeting, the rules and regulations can be changed on a 2-week notice hearing by the planning board. So I think, so that addresses that issue. The second issue is that for the last 8 or 10 years, and the planning board report addresses this quite well. We've engaged in a series of zoning changes regarding the downtown. And those changes have led to 2 buildings being permitted, one of which is under construction. And my personal view is that those buildings have led the downtown in the wrong direction. And that where it's okay to have a 3-story building with a minimum amount of which there is no requirement in the zoning bylaw presently. You could have an ATM in the basement, call it a mixed, or on the first floor, and call the building a mixed-use building and have the rest of the building entirely devoted to residential use, an apartment building. So there needs to be standards, and those standards for the downtown should be different and more stringent than for village centers. Therefore, 40% as opposed to some other number, because that's where we want to focus our commercial activity if possible. For 4 and 5-story buildings, the nature of the parking requirements and other issues like recreation space, which everyone understands is available at Ann Whalen and Clark House, but has not been provided for either of the 2 buildings that have been recently permitted. We need to have a special permit that requires that the facilities that are being proposed can on-site take care of the needs of the residents and the commercial and retail users. That's why this article is being proposed. I urge you to vote yes, and I will be sitting forward. If any member of town meeting has a question, I'd be happy to answer it.
And Mr. Schreiber for the Planning Board.
Steve Schreiber, Vice Chair of the Planning Board, town meeting member from Precinct 9. Mr. Weber, the Chair of the Planning Board, is at his daughter's graduation, so I am the substitute. The Planning Board voted 6-1 to recommend dismissal of Article 25 for multiple reasons, some of which I'll cover in my 3 minutes. The Article 25, as originally written, had a number of significant technical problems described in the Planning Board report to town meeting. The revised motion has resolved the most significant problems, but they are an indication to the degree to which Article 25 was rushed and only partially considered. It did not undergo the public process and attention to potential consequences that such an important topic requires. Article 25 will actively restrict downtown development. It will require a special permit for any building of 4 to 5 stories. It will ban residential uses from the first and second floors of downtown buildings. It will mandate that at least 40% of the gross floor area of mixed-use buildings be retail and commercial uses. Zoning can encourage responsible development and discourage inappropriate development, but it cannot force businesses to happen. Trying to dictate a specific high percentage of retail and other business uses in new buildings is in itself a technical problem. It will not work. Retail uses and other business uses are difficult to attract, to establish, and to sustain over time. Businesses will simply go elsewhere when a community places too many obstacles in the way. Article 25 will make it harder, not easier, to attract useful new retail stores, business activity, and residential uses into the downtown. It will damage long-standing community goals. The master plan recommends pursuing high-density mixed-use development in the village centers and downtown to support sustainable growth of existing businesses and to attract new ones while protecting environmental values. It recommended that mixed-use development be permitted by right in certain targeted areas. Multiple town meetings have agreed with those goals and have taken actions to bring them about. By requiring a special permit for anything taller than 3 floors, Article 25 tries to turn back the clock, making future projects more difficult, expensive, and uncertain. Reducing the residential capacity of mixed-use buildings downtown will increase, not decrease, the pressure on existing neighborhoods, pushing new residents into those neighborhoods or out of town. The changes that town meeting have adopted over the last decade have worked, generating much-needed new growth. Until recently, the north end of downtown was dominated by 1 to 2 story highway strip commercial buildings dating from the 1960s and vacant lots. Here's the bottom line. Article 25's technical problems are an indication of its rushed, inadequate consideration. It undoes decades of previous town meetings' decisions. We recommend dismissal.
Thank you. Mr. Wald for the Select Board.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Select Board voted 4-0 with 1 absent for dismissal. For the reasons that the Planning Board stated, so I'll be brief, I don't have to repeat them, but basically, again, land use had been outpacing population growth, and that's called sprawl, and in the master plan and a series of other measures, we've tried to concentrate development in the built-up areas to preserve open space. And part of this infill involves mixed-use buildings because you want a vibrant downtown. You don't want buildings that are empty at night because they have only offices. You want people living in town. You want action in the streets. You want the downtown to be a place where people want to be. And our feeling about this measure is that although we are sure that the petitioners and members of this board share the ideal of sustainable outcomes, we think this one actually limits them rather than brings us closer. Number one, by reducing the number of stories, you're reducing the infill. that we've been trying to achieve. And then number two, you may be rendering new development or even redevelopment of existing properties economically infeasible. In other words, we're not getting the highest and best use out of these properties. And then, as been noted also, the idea of forcing retail is perhaps commendable or desirable, but probably not realistic. In any case, the 40% figure is not backed up by a systematic study. I think it's a statement. So for all these reasons, we recommend dismissal.
Thank you. And Ms. Ratner for the Finance Committee.
The Finance Committee recommends dismissal of this article by a vote of 4-0 with 1 absent and 1 vacancy. When we looked at this article, we didn't have the wording of the motion, and that is when we took our vote. And there were technical problems with this article, which we felt could cause liability problems. So we are also recommending dismissal.
Thank you. Mr. Steinberg.
I move to dismiss the article.
Motion has been made and seconded for dismissal. So that is now the motion on the floor. A motion to dismiss requires just a majority vote. If that passes, then we are done with Article 25. If the motion to dismiss fails, then we go back to the main motion, which would require a 2/3 majority to pass, since it is an amendment to our zoning bylaws. I understand that it will be virtually impossible to recognize the difference between somebody speaking in favor of the article or in favor of dismissal, so I'm not going to push that too much. So proponents of the article don't have to try and limit their discussion to a very focused why not to dismiss. We can talk about the pros and cons of the article and of the main motion, but we should remember that the first vote we come to will be a vote to dismiss. And Mr. O'Connor.
So, Vince O'Connor, Precinct 1. I would urge the town meeting not to dismiss this article, because I think we need to discuss the substance of what is before us. One of the reasons that we need to discuss it is contained in the report of the Planning Board, where it talks about the difficulties of getting retail establishments. Anyone who followed even closely the discussion of 1 East Pleasant Street understands that the building that is proposed to replace the carriage shops will have less than a quarter of the commercial space that the carriage shops and retail space that the carriage shops had, all of which was occupied by various local businesses, 8 or 10 of which went out of business, and a number of employees of whom lost their jobs. So we had 1 East Pleasant Street represents a not economic development, but the loss of jobs and the loss of retail space in the downtown, where if we are going to hold the line and try to remake this as a family-friendly town, we need to have 12-month-a-year retail space in the downtown, and the way to do that is to require that that be what is provided. The other issue that the Planning Board report did not address is the implications of the Planning Board's failure to get really good information from applicants who propose downtown buildings. Whether or not the Planning Board chooses to use its waiver requirement and waives the application of the municipal parking district, saying, we understand there's a municipal parking district, but your parking demands are just so extreme, with regard to what you're providing in terms of parking, that we simply are going to waive that provision and require that you provide parking. And that, I think, is another issue. The planning board has that waiver power. They need to, and we need to require that they be provided with the necessary information to make a substantive judgment about using their waiver powers. They can simply acknowledge that they don't want to use it, but at least the information should be before them and the public.
Thank you. Yes, from the planning board.
Madam Planning Board. The Planning Board actually does not have the power to waive the municipal parking district. Municipal parking district is the zoning bylaw. Waivers are for requirements that the petitioner would like to have modified. They're not for the Planning Board to unilaterally change the bylaw.
Thank you. Yes, right here in the second row.
James Barat, Precinct 1. Two things come to mind. One, if you want people to come into town to shop, you're going to have to provide some commercial properties. Two, unless you really want a parking garage that's going to cost millions, you can vote to have this delayed.
Yes, back aisle there with the green card.
Aaron Hayden, Precinct 8. We've heard a mention of the master plan a couple of times tonight and several times before tonight. I think for the members of town meeting who are new, they may not understand exactly what it is. And I thought as a sort of as a pseudo point of order to explain that it is not a plan.
Okay, just want to interrupt you. It's not a point of order. You're recognized to speak, and you may continue.
Thank you. It's not a plan except for the chapter on implementation. What it is a collection of thousands of ideas from our neighbors, from us, that we could rely on to reflect what it is we are looking for in our town, of our town. I believe there are 3,000 comments on the website. I don't know if it's still up, but there was at one time 3,000 comments on economic development, on parking, on housing, on transportation, on natural resources and open space. There were also, I wanted to just touch on how we got that information. In order to reach every segment of the town, in order to collect this information, we sent people out. We were translated into 3 different languages. We had many different types of fora between charrettes, public meetings, town hall style meetings. We tried to have our meetings during different times of the day, different days of the week, to make sure that we could reach every corner of the population. So that the thing that we call the master plan really is the master list of ideas and wishes that we have for the town as best as we could, using surveys and questionnaires and a website that was open for 1.5 years. And so I just wanted to be clear on what it is as we think about it and think about how it might apply to articles that we hear tonight.
Thank you. Yes, right there in the front row. Wait for the microphone.
Harry York's Precinct 4. Will you explain the difference why an up and down vote or a 2/3 vote is not acceptable? Which one should be applied here?
Okay. I think you're asking for an explanation of what we're voting on?
No. The up or down or 2/3 or whatever it is.
Yes. So the motion on the floor is a motion to dismiss, which requires a majority. And that's considered to be a negative vote if it passes. If that fails, then we have the main motion from the petitioner, and that requires a 2/3. If that fails, that's also considered to be a negative vote. If that passes, it's a positive vote, and the zoning bylaw changes. Right there in the center, third row from the back.
Claire Bertrand, Precinct 8. I'm going to support dismissal. I'm getting the sense that there's a lot of fear about some of the growth that's happening that's not even yet unwrapped. The building.
Let's try not to talk about motives in different directions and just talk about the facts of the article.
So I don't feel that this article will help solve any problems, because I don't think there are any problems. The development that has happened has not yet impacted us. There's a lot of concern about the effect that it might have on parking, but we also saw the small building behind Judy's go up, and it has not had a bad impact. It's brought in people to live, and it has not had a bad impact. Some people don't like the look of it. A lot of people do like the look of it, but either way, it's there, and it's lived in by people who shop and support the downtown. So I just feel like the article represents concern without evidence of an impact that is damaging or hurting us in our community. So I think it's something that if we find there is a problem in the future, we could revisit this and look at it again. But at this point, I would support dismissal.
Way in the back there, last row.
Ira Addis, Precinct 2. I'm not going to support the idea of dismissing this article. As I mentioned earlier last week, I'm sure everybody here works very hard to do their job, but I had a very hands-on experience with the retreat. And I know full well that there's a lot of ideological statements made by a number of the members of the board and also members of town and town government that are not backed by data. I didn't see any data when the people in Cushman were fighting the retreat. I don't hear any data today other than we can't tell people how many economic businesses we should put on the first floor or the second floor, and you shouldn't pass this. I want to remind people here that when the discussion around the retreat was going on...
Excuse me, I'm going to interrupt you here. This is a tough one. There was no... Okay, you can stop the clock, thank you. There was no zoning bylaw, as I'm aware, that came before town meeting having to do with the retreat, and I understand that you're here in town meeting a lot because of your concerns, but I'm having a really tough time drawing a connection between this zoning article and the decisions by the planning board and the retreat.
I'll explain it to you then.
So I really think it's sort of a
I'm
stretch.
going to continue and I'm going to explain it. Because, number one, the reason, during that whole discussion, similar to this discussion, there was very little response from anyone to the objections made by the local community. Everything just went right over their head. There was no response whatsoever. And the reason we received a response to that particular issue was because we spent $50,000 to get the information that was necessary. I don't hear anybody showing me any information as to why this article should be defeated. And I think if you're going to make statements like that, you need to have the information, and I need to see it, just like everybody else does.
Yes, from the planning board.
Rob Crowner. With regard to data, I also didn't hear any data why this should be supported, but leaving that aside, mixed-use buildings have been allowed downtown by right with the site plan review since 1986. They've been allowed to be 4 stories since 1992. So for almost 30 years, mixed-use buildings, and for almost 25 years, 4-story mixed-use buildings have been accepted, encouraged, and even hoped for. But nevertheless, they weren't being built. It wasn't until the 5th floor became possible in 2013 that redevelopment actually started happening. Before that, Boltwood Place received a special permit to go to 5 floors. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't have been financially feasible. This suggests that the workable ratio for new downtown construction, at least within the last few decades, may be somewhere around 20% non-residential, not 40% as this article attempts to enforce. Even 25% may be high.
Thank you. Yes, right in the front row.
Larry Kelly, Precinct 5. So I'm going to vote in favor of the motion to dismiss. We have two huge problems in this town. I'll give you some statistics. First of all, as I've said a few times before, half the property in this town, more than half, is owned by tax exempts, predominantly 4 entities. Amherst College is number 1, UMass number 2, Hampshire College number 3, and the town itself is number 4. Although I've been in town meeting 22 years, and I can't remember a single year where we haven't purchased open space conservation land like we did 2 weeks ago around Gull Pond and Owens Pond. So Amherst, the town of, may actually be number 3. I'll have to check with the assessor on that. And then the other main problem that we have in town, which is equally co-number 1 with that one, is 90% of the tax base that pays taxes, which again, half the pie doesn't, so the other half of the pie has to work twice as hard. But that other half of the pie, 90% is housing, only 10% commercial. That's pathetic. That is pathetic. Hadley, by contrast, is 34% commercial, 66% residential. As far as I'm concerned, that's 3.4 times better. So the neat thing about mixed use is it gets double bang for the buck because it gives us housing and it gives us commercial. So we need both. We desperately need housing. So even if Vince is right in that I agree with him.
Please don't refer to other
Sorry,
people by name.
excuse me. Even if one of the previous speakers is correct, I agree, you shouldn't have an ATM on the first floor and call that, hey, it's a mixed-use building. But as far as I'm concerned, if even you put up a brand new building and it's 90% residential and only 10% commercial, then that mirrors perfectly the lousy average that we currently have anyway, but it's still a good thing because you're getting a ton of housing, which we desperately need. Not just student housing, not just low-income housing, not just high-income housing, not just senior housing. We need all of it. So when you do these mixed-use projects, you get a little bit of commercial, which is better than none, and you get a lot of housing, which is better than none. And you get tax revenue. Thank you.
Mr. O'Connor?
Again, Vince O'Connor, Precinct 1. So with respect to getting a little bit of commercial space where there was none, I wish that that were true. But in fact, the One East Pleasant Street project with the planning board approved was almost entirely commercial and residential, and the commercial and retail, and the commercial and retail space that is going to be in the building that replaces it is, again, less than 30%, about a quarter of what was there before. So we actually lost over 15,000 square feet of retail and commercial space. So it depends on where you put a building. Put a building on a vacant lot, the previous speaker was correct. If you tear down existing retail and commercial buildings and replace them by what in essence I think are UMass dorms, or will prove to be UMass dorms this September, I think you have a problem. I simply disagree with the perspective of the speakers who claim that there isn't enough commercial space to fill such buildings. And I think the experience of a North Amherst property owner who built to have a single ground floor be commercial and retail, and found that she, after getting inquiries from commercial users who wanted to be on the second floor, but the second floor hadn't been built for commercial use and therefore couldn't be used by a commercial tenant. I think that's an indication that that we should do some of the work ourselves here in town meeting to make commercial space available. Finally, I would just like to point out, it is true that the municipal parking district is in the zoning bylaw. It is section 7.4. But in section 7.9, waivers, section 7.90 says, any section or subsection of Article 7 parking regulations may be waived or modified by the permit granting board for compelling reasons of safety, aesthetics, or site design, which in fact was done when the building at Fraternity Sorority Park was permitted. In fact, it was done so enthusiastically that the building commissioner refused to grant a construction permit unless the board went back and required 4 HP spaces. They waived the planning board waived the entire parking section of the bylaw. So the fact that they say that they can't waive the municipal parking district is absolutely incorrect.
Yes, Mr. Tucker.
I'm going to speak technically in support of what the planning board has asserted. You cannot, through a waiver or a modification, reimpose a requirement that has been exempted in the bylaw explicitly. You particularly cannot do that for a use that is allowed by right, by site plan review approval in the bylaw. You can't go in and say, okay, your building's by right, and you're in a zoning district which requires no parking, but under a modification or waiver process, we're going to create a parking requirement and impose it on your project. That would be gravy for a lawyer. As for the Olympia Place project that was mentioned, there were at least 4 handicap parking spaces as part of the project all along. The building commissioner's intervention had to do with where those spaces were located. The original location was adjacent to a side entrance that created the shortest travel distance for people with physical challenges. The building commissioner noted that state law required that at least one of the handicap parking spaces and the drop-off zone needed to be in association with the main entrance, which was well back in the center of the property. So a handicap drop-off zone was created in that area. The planning board required that the project negotiate with the University of Massachusetts and demonstrate that it had control and access to the university-owned parking spaces that were in the parking lots adjacent, and that was a condition of the permit. So there is not a total waiver. There was not a building commissioner trying to stop the project, and no, you cannot, through a waiver provision, impose requirements that have been specifically exempted.
Yes, second row there.
James Scott, Precinct 7. I call the question.
Do I hear a second? The motion for the previous question has been made and second. We will come to an immediate vote. If 2/3 of you vote yes, we will then come to a vote on the motion to dismiss. All those in favor of the motion for the previous question, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. We're going to try it once more with modulated voices, and let's see if we can hear. Did I hear a point of order? Yeah, hang on. Wait for the microphone, please, and raise your hand so she can see who you are.
Isn't this just a majority vote?
No. We're moving the previous question. So there's a motion to end debate, and that requires 2/3. We're not voting on the motion to dismiss yet. So we're going to try that once more, everybody, in a nice, even tone of voice. All those in favor of the motion for the previous question, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. Moderator hears 2/3. I hear people doubt it. We will have a standing vote. Can I quickly see my 6 tellers up here? Make sure I have them. I see 1, 2. I see 3, 4. I see 5, 6. Okay. I think we've got these 2. Rich, I think you're off the hook because we've got these 2. Okay. This is the motion for the previous question. All those in favor of the motion for the previous question, please rise and remain standing. On the left, there are 28 yes votes. You may be seated on the left. In the center, there are 27 yes votes. You may be seated in the center. On the right, there are 38 yes votes. You may be seated on the right. All those opposed to the motion for the previous question, please rise and remain standing. If you are unable to rise and wish to vote, just raise your hand and the tellers will see you. On the left, there are 24 no votes. On the right, there are 14 no votes. Yes, it needs. In the center, there are 21 no votes. The yes votes are 93, the no votes are 59. This is not a 2/3. We will continue with our discussion on Article 25. The motion before us is still the motion to dismiss. Yes, on the aisle there, second from the back.
Waylon Greeny, Precinct 10. I rise with the intent, not knowing whether I'm going to vote or no for this dismissal of the article, but I want to express my personal frustration over the zoning development so far. Because of the two pieces of projects being approved, I think we have finally hit the reality of the ideology, the idea that we want to have a mixed use in downtown, and the idea that we want to have a more diversified tax base. So these two things made us want to consider just what we mean exactly. So because of the shortcomings currently that we are facing of the two projects in town, it makes me start to think, what do we mean exactly by mixed use? If the statement made by one of the previous speakers about what if the mixed use only include one ATM machine, is that considered a mixed use? I don't think so. But what is exactly that will fit our desire and our concept of mixed use? I think by voting no to the dismissal will allow us to give it some proper airing of just what we think as a group. So with that, I would suggest that we ought to give this dismissal as not to vote for it, give us some idea, some time to think about it. And the second reason that I would suggest we not to vote for the dismissal is that if we think there is not enough commercial activity that we would not warrant a mixed-use definition, then maybe we should really go back to the drawing board to think our original intent in the master plan in order to increase the tax base. So we should have a mixed-use downtown. Maybe we ought to go back to rethink, is that realistic to do such a, planning, this idea? So everything is in flux. Given the fact that we have created a position for the economic development director, I would like to be hopeful and optimistic. If we give this position a couple years of opportunity, maybe we will be able to generate enough commercial demand such that mixed use will become a good idea. So with these two reasons, I would ask all of us, give us some thoughts to allow the discussion of the motion maker to allow the debate to continue. So I would not vote for the dismissal of the article.
Yes, all the way in the back there.
Abby Jensen, Precinct 4. So I'm going to vote to dismiss this article because I see it as deeply flawed. And I get the feeling from a lot of folks here that although this article, as proposed, isn't going to affect any of the current things that are being built right now, it's not going to affect Triangle Street, it's not going to affect One Pleasant Street, it is only going to affect projects going forward. And yet that's all we've been talking about, are those two projects. This isn't going to be a punitive article. This is going to be future building. And I've got to say, a lot of town meeting this term has been talking about limiting development, limiting building new housing units. And yet, our problem in this town is affordable housing for families, which comes up frequently, that we don't bring families into Amherst. Well, heck, you guys, the reason why we don't bring families in is because housing is so expensive. The reason why housing is so expensive is because we don't have any housing. The only way to correct that is to build more housing. And so we're fighting against the same desire, which is to make this affordable community for families. And yet, on this floor, we're talking about every night limiting building housing. How can those two views be held in one person's mind is beyond me. They're contradictory. So I'm voting to dismiss this bill, or amendment, not only because I think it's conceptually against what many of us want, which is affordable housing in our town so that families can live here, which relies on building more units. But I also think that this is flawed in its writing, and it deserves, if somebody wants to go back and write a better one, that's fine. And I just want to say one other thing. You don't have to use your whole 3 minutes.
Yes, right here in the second row.
Janet Chevin, Precinct 7. I move to refer this article to the Planning Board for further study.
I'm not going to accept that. Actually, you can't. We have to deal with the motion to dismiss first. That trumps a motion to refer. So if the motion to dismiss fails, then we can make a motion to refer. But once the motion to dismiss is on the floor, that...
Well, I have a point of order then.
Okay, it's...
Point of order.
Okay.
A motion to dismiss means this goes away completely.
Yes.
No one has to think about it, talk about it, or anything. Okay. And I didn't even know if the petitioners could even come back with another time. Well, let me finish. A motion to refer suggests to the planning board that this is...
I'm going to interrupt you. I'm sorry, because that's not why I made this ruling. It's nothing to do with the pros and cons of which is better or worse. It has to do with the town meeting rule that says if a motion to dismiss is on the floor, you can't make a motion to refer. You have to wait until the dismiss is dealt with. And if it fails, then somebody can make a motion to refer. But a dismiss, there's a hierarchy of motions, and a dismiss is a higher level. So you can't overrule that, or you can't cover, or can't make a motion to refer when a motion to dismiss is on the floor. I can show you what it says in town meeting time later if you want. Yes, third row, center there.
Chris Riddle, Precinct 2. Two things. One is I just want to go on the record and saying I definitely support the idea of a mixed-use community with a lot of housing and a lot of commercial, and the housing is feeding the commercial and making our town center a vital place. Other people have said that. I just want to stand up and say the same thing. Two, is it possible that that the previous speaker is correct and that this is a question to the planning board, could one ATM constitute a sufficient amount of commercial space for a commercial building on the ground floor?
Yes, Mr. Crowner.
Unfortunately, I think, in my opinion, I don't know what a lawyer might say, but I think, unfortunately, that might be the case.
Okay, wait for the microphone, please.
Adrienne Teresi, Precinct 7. It was such an important question, only part of which I was able to hear back there. And the planning board director began to respond. So could we hear that full question so that the answer could be intelligible?
It's a valid point of order that you couldn't hear the question. I can ask him to repeat it, and I'll ask the responder to repeat the answer. But I can't require people to answer more than that. So would you repeat the question, please, and make sure people can hear it, Mr. Riddle?
Chris Riddle, Precinct 2. Is it correct that one ATM on the ground floor would constitute sufficient commercial space to provide to designate a given building a mixed-use building?
And now you may respond again.
And so my interpretation of the bylaw would be that if a business wanted to open a storefront with just an ATM, that's conceivably that would be allowed. I don't think that an ATM in the office of a property management company would constitute a mixed use, but a standalone store that consists of just an ATM, possibly.
Mr. Tucker.
If that situation arose, staff would ask town council for an interpretation and would argue for whether or not that met the definition of the use as it reads. And what it does is it says in combination with permitted uses, and then there's this long list of a multiplicity of uses that are non-residential, as principal uses. That is to say, one of the principal uses of the property. And an ATM, even an ATM in a walk-in enclosure, I think would not meet that criteria.
Yes, second row from the back there.
Nolan and I, Precinct 2. So I've owned retail businesses in Amherst for 19 years, including a candy store that I had in downtown Amherst for 4 years that I moved 2 years ago to Northampton, and it's become very successful there. It did well here, but I think this article completely misunderstands businesses in downtown Amherst. Asking for more space or more retail is not the answer. The answer is bringing more people to downtown Amherst. And by building these larger buildings, whether you want, whether you're uncomfortable with them or not, what they're doing is they're bringing in a high density into town, which will be able to give us the retail in the future. It's my opinion that this should be deferred, mainly because I want to see, I want to be able to bring my candy store back to town. And I can't do that until we actually have a vibrant town with people living in it. And at this point, we're not there yet. The second reason why I'm going to defer this is because changing the zoning bylaws is a really difficult thing. And it takes 2/3 to do it. And I think we need to be really sure that whatever we change, we're perfectly ready to live with for a long time. So I'm voting to dismiss.
Yes, and a reminder, the motion on the floor is a motion to dismiss. Yes, over there on the aisle.
Lawrence Quigley, Precinct 1. I'm a terrible public speaker. I'd like to thank the people who are willing to stand in front of the...
Point of order.
Yes, we have a point of order.
There's so much talking going on back there that it's really difficult.
Okay. Obviously, I can't hear it here because I'm far away, but let's not have, any talking back there. Hush. Thank you. You may continue.
I told you I was a terrible speaker. I was thanking the people who are willing to stand up in front of everybody and make decisions and have to deal with the consequences. I'm very, very grateful. I raised a 36-year-old in town. I'm blessed to have raised him here, and I don't know a better place where I would have wanted to raise him. Thank you all very much. I think the Greek word for the private citizen is idiotos or something. It's where we get the word idiot. I'm very happy to have been one of the private citizens in Amherst. I'd like to encourage the deciders to let the 59 people know that want to keep talking. Let them know that you hear them. I don't feel heard, and I want to feel heard deeply. And I think if you could let me know that you hear me, I'm sure you make better decisions than I would. I'm sure this is rushed. I'm sure it's not the best decision. But people want to keep talking because I want to keep talking. I stood up to keep talking because I don't think I'm being heard. If you could just let me know you hear me, I think it would go a long way to shortening the process. Thank you so much again, everyone.
Okay. Yes, from the Select Board.
I can assure you that you have been heard, and I think we take seriously all the comments that we hear at town meeting and at the various other board and committee meetings that I know we attend. I won't speak for the other boards sitting to my left, but I really want to assure you that you all are being heard.
Yes, front row right here.
Yes, John Fox, Precinct 10. I would like to address simply the notion that a number of speakers have suggested that if we build more housing in downtown, somehow we're going to develop the mixed use, the diversification in housing and affordable housing that we all want. We certainly want all of that, but I think there's a basic misunderstanding of how housing markets work. If you take Kendrick Place and take $1,700, which I think they're asking for a single bedroom, and $3,300 for a 3-bedroom. These are prices at the high end, if perhaps the highest end, of the housing market. And I believe that what you're encouraging is not more affordable housing, but a rise in all rental prices as well as housing prices generally, because the yield on these projects is higher and higher. So it isn't true that if you just build more and have more housing, that you somehow are making the town more available to a diverse population. The fact is that the rentals that are contemplated in Kendrick Place and 1 East Pleasant Street are so high that if you've gone to any city in this country, San Francisco, Boston, as those rents get higher and higher, the population becomes more and more exclusive rather than more and more diverse. So I simply think that it's a misunderstanding to believe that building more will somehow satisfy the desire all of us have to have truly diverse populations living in town. Thank you very much.
Yes, back there on the aisle, striped shirt.
Michael Birtwistle, Precinct 2. I'm going to vote to not to dismiss this article because I would like to have it referred to the planning board or divided into two motions. I think there are excellent ideas in both of these two paragraphs, and I think we need to consider them more carefully individually because they don't really fit together in my view. So I think a vote to not to dismiss the article and then to refer it to the planning board would be the best course of action we could take now.
Yes, right there in the yellow sweater.
Thank you. Jane Wald, Precinct 1. Two previous speakers have explained a little bit to us from their own perspectives about how we might misunderstand the business market downtown and how we might misunderstand the housing market downtown. I think the combination of these things means that this is not an article for us to vote on. We don't, apparently, it needs more thought, it needs more consideration. The notion that it's going to either help business or either help housing, neither one of those things seems to be gaining traction in this room. To me, it seems that the article as it's worded ties the hands of the developers of housing and it ties the hands of the developers of commercial space. So I'm going to vote to dismiss.
Second row right here.
Emmanuel Morales, Precinct 8. Can you hear me? Okay, good. I just want to make clear that I'm sort of on the fence on whether or not I would support dismissing the article. But one thing is clear, I am not in support of the article as it currently stands, if that's okay to say right now. You can't hear me?
Yeah,
oh,
hold it real close to your mouth.
I'm sorry. Let me repeat that last statement. So I'm on the fence whether or not to support dismissal of the article, but I'm certainly not in support of the article as it stands currently. It's important to remind everyone that you cannot legislate innovation. You cannot just say we will make a certain amount of space available for commercial property and then clap your hands together, say poof, and business shows up. If we could do that, all our problems would have been solved years ago. I just want to remind town meeting of that fact. Thank you.
Yes, in the red shirt, second row from the back.
Good evening. My name is Nelson Acosta. I'm from Precinct 8. I've been living in this community since 1978, and I've seen it change dramatically. And I have a couple of questions. I always liked the fact that Amherst is a town, not a city. So I'm wondering if we build more density in the town of Amherst with all these new buildings, where's the parking going to come from? Is the town of Amherst going to have to pay for a larger parking spot if the builders are not providing it? The other question I have is, since we're being compared to Northampton and building density there, who's going to make the streets wider? I actually like the small streets. I do like the fact that it's a town. I think I'm not opposed to investments in building density into the community, But if we're going to build more kindred places, like where there's a single room for $1,700 and a 3-bedroom for $3,000, it's not going to bring working class people here. They currently can't live here, and they're not going to live here. That's not the type of development I want to see. But the question that we all need to ask, I live in South Amherst, and I'm scared to drive into town. Why? Because parking is crazy. Everybody who drives into town, most residents know that. The other thing is, I have a daughter. She's 13 years old. She's a very good cyclist, very good cyclist. I never, when we go cycling, we either take the bicycle path or we go through all the other streets outside of the center of Amherst. In the old days, I used to be able to cycle through center of town. Now it's dangerous. The traffic is crazy. What do you think is going to happen if we add 1,000 more cars or 1,000 more units to the town of Amherst? We're going to have to expand the streets, folks. Who's going to pay for that? Is it us? Do we want to do that? And the other thing is we keep talking about this master plan and this master plan. I wish this master plan was approved by the town meeting if we're going to live by it. Correct? Take care. Have a good day.
Let's see. Right on the aisle here.
I really like the idea of...
I'm sorry, identify yourself.
Bob Greeny, Precinct 10. I encourage people to vote not to dismiss the article and to refer it to the planning board. I think if what you see happening in town you don't like, and I don't like it, then I think we should send that message to the planning board that for all your good intentions, we don't like what we see happening, and we're worried, yes, we're afraid, that we're going to be building a parking garage and subsidizing developers' profits, and that we're going to have student dormitories downtown where we want true mixed-use housing and commercial spaces. So with that in mind, I'm going to vote against dismissal and vote in favor of referral because I think it does need more work. Thank you.
Yes, in the blue shirt right here, 4th row.
Gordon Freed, Precinct 6. I call the question. And I would like to make a point of order. Just 1 second.
Fine, yes.
Just in honor of our previous...
no, point of order is directed to me, and make it right now in a very simple sentence, please.
In honor of a previous...
Hang on, he has to finish first.
Moderator, if you're going to hold the microphone like a trumpet, your voice will be louder.
Actually, I disagree. I think that's a very good point of order. He's pointing out to people that you hold the microphone. We once had somebody demonstrate it. It was great. You hold it right up to your lips like a trumpet, and then everybody can hear you clearly. So a point of order that has to do with not being able to hear people clearly is a very valid point of order. We now have a motion for the previous question, which I believe has been seconded. Let's hear that again. Yes. So if 2/3 of you vote yes, we will then come to an immediate vote on the motion to dismiss. But first before us is the motion for the previous question. All those in favor of the motion for the previous question, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. Moderator hears 2/3. We now come to a vote on the motion to dismiss Article 25, which requires a majority. All those in favor of the motion to dismiss, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. Moderator hears a majority. Okay, definitely have a standing vote. If 15 of you want, we'll have a tally. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, looks like we're having a tally. So now everybody be real quiet and listen really carefully. Your tally card number 7 is the one we're using, but it doesn't have your name on it. You must sign your name legibly. I have a point of order from the 3rd row. Can I have a microphone, please?
Am I correct that you don't need a signature, you just need a printed name that is legible to read? It does not need to be signed, I don't think, since all our other voting cards never had a signature on them?
That's interesting, because, Sue, do you have an opinion on that? Does it need a signature, or can it be printed, is the question. So long as it's legible. Clerk says it does not need a signature, but it must be legible. Okay, we have our 6 tellers. This is card number 7 with your name written on it legibly. Please pass it to the tellers. You must stay in your row until the teller has released your row. The precinct. Point of order, if everybody could be quiet so we could hear it, please.
Nina Wishengrad, Precinct 5. What are we voting on at this moment?
Yes, we are voting on the motion to dismiss Article 25, which requires a majority. Card number 7, it needs a legible name on it. I hear another point of order. Let's get a microphone over there, please. Or come, yeah. Hang on, Aaron's got it right there, microphone right there.
Point of George Keller, Precinct 1. I was wondering whether or not I'm asking whether or not you have to put your precinct as well as your name.
You do not. It would be lovely and helpful for the clerk, but all that's really required is your name, and it must be legible. Sure. Another microphone. Wailing, can we have a microphone up here in the second row for Ms. Chavan? Right here.
Thing 7. If we vote to dismiss, that means that this cannot be considered for 2 years?
Okay. The question is, what does a vote for dismissal mean? We've already... I will allow this. It means the petitioner can't bring it back in the next 2 years. It doesn't prevent the planning board from considering something similar, but it means the petitioner can't bring it back for 2 years.
Okay, but let me go further. But the vote for dismissal does not ask the planning board to consider it.
Correct.
A vote for referral would.
But we need to stop this discussion because we're having a vote now. The total is 76 votes in favor and 88 opposed, so the motion to dismiss did not pass. So the main motion is now before us. Ms. Chevan. Yes, the microphone, please.
Janet Chevan, Precinct 7. I move to refer this article to the Planning Board for further. I move to refer.
Okay, no, she heard you. She seconded. So the motion to refer. Motion to refer has been made and seconded. You may speak to your motion.
I think the fact that this motion. Yes, okay. I think the fact that this motion did not get dismissed is another example of people voting to send a message. And I think the message was, let's reconsider this, and let's iron out the technical difficulties. Let's have some discussion. Let's have some open meetings where we can discuss this. There are many of us. The clock's not going. I'm not going to talk forever anyway. But anyway, there are many of us who really fear that without some further changes to the zoning bylaw, that we are facing another parking garage. And there are many of us who will vote against a parking garage. Not that I'm raising the specter of a parking garage, but, but we have to face the fact that most of us would like adequate public transportation, bicycle lanes, etc. I would love to get on a bus or a trolley to go wherever I want to go. I grew up in a city where my parents didn't own a car. I didn't have to have a car to go to school, to go shopping, to do anything. We love it. But right now, we're in the automobile age, and you're not going to have people get rid of their cars just because. You've got to provide. Now, here I am down in South Amherst. I used to have a bus that I did take to work when I worked at the university, and now it doesn't come into Orchard Valley. Now it doesn't come into Orchard Valley because there wasn't enough ridership. The ridership goes down, the cars go up. I mean, please, let's refer this and consider it with great care.
Motion on the floor. My mic on? Yeah. Motion on the floor is to refer. This requires a majority. Let's see. Not too many hands. Yes, third row right here.
John Hornick, Precinct 7. I will vote to refer. I think that there's been enough discussion here as well as on prior nights to indicate that people think there's a parking problem in downtown Amherst. I think that the discussion tonight suggests that we're not clear on with a mixed-use project, what percentage is the minimum for a business or commercial space. We've heard two different interpretations and the potential of having to go to town council. So I'd like to see that clarified. I don't necessarily think that this specific bylaw change needs to come back to us, but I do think that we need to hear something about what we need to do with respect to our zoning bylaws to fix the parking problem and to define better what's meant by business and commercial use. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, second row from the back.
Carol Gray, Precinct 7. I urge people to vote against referral and vote yes for the underlying article. And one of the reasons why I think this article is important to pass is because of the sentence that provides for special permits. Let me read that. In those same districts, proposed structures of 4 to 5 stories shall be authorized by special permit only. Had this been on the books before those monstrosity buildings, those buildings in our downtown, we wouldn't have had them because special permits give you the right to say no. The vast majority of special permits are decided in favor of special permits. But you want to have the right to say no if there's a building that's completely out of character with our downtown. And the difference between special permit and site plan review goes to the planning board, and it basically means you can't say no, you can put conditions on something, but you can't say no. And that's what was enforced that allowed those buildings to go up. Special permit goes to a different body. It goes to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Some special permits also go to the Planning Board. But for example, when they're going before the Zoning Board of Appeals, if even one person on that board votes no, 3 people decide. If one votes no, then the special permit is not granted. So special permits are critical for controlling how our downtown develops. And about 5 to 10 years ago, the planning department was proposing changing special permit to site plan review in many different districts. And this is part of why we have the issues that we have today. Another thing about special permit versus site plan review is that some of the discussion about affordable housing said that part of why we couldn't require the 10% low income affordable housing was because things were site plan review. They weren't special permit. So giving special permits, making special permits be required for the tallest things in the downtown would give us a lot more control, and I think that's a great reason to vote no to referral and yes to the underlying article.
Yes, 4th row right in the center here.
Ruth Smith, Precinct 6. I would just like to point out that while Northampton doesn't have a lot of mixed housing downtown and has a lot of commerce, there's still a big parking problem, and that's in Northampton. So, and if you think that students don't come with cars, they absolutely do, and they don't come with small cars. They come with SUVs that their parents have bought from them, and, you know, because I live on Main Street, there are students to the left of us, students to the right of us, and we see them with their big cars all the time. And I think in some of the housing that we have built for them that they move into, you know, we put the cart before the horse and we build the housing before we think about where the parking's going to be.
Yes, in the green shirt there.
Steve Bloom, Precinct 10. I support the underlying article as imperfect as it is. I have to take exception to what a previous speaker said, namely that the town doesn't presently have problems and that it is all speculation about the effects of future projects. The speaker must not have been present at the parking forums at which virtually everybody, merchants, residents, and visitors, said there wasn't enough parking, and that's without Kendrick Place and 1 East Pleasant Street. Until parking is seriously and satisfactorily addressed, there can be no more development. Amherst is not a social experiment, and its citizens are not guinea pigs. It is a real place where real people drive real cars for real needs. And finally, this is a very divided town. The Select Board and Planning Board did nothing to validate their own credibility when vote after vote is unanimous and doesn't reflect literally half of the town's composition. The board needs to reflect a full spectrum of views, for without a full spectrum of views, can there be compromise, which is what is so sorely needed here.
Let's see. Yes, second from the corner in back row.
Pat Church, Precinct 5. I'd like to thank the prior speaker who mentioned some of the technicalities. I think the special permit issue is really important to consider for this, supporting this basic article. I live, as I've said before, on the very edge of downtown. The 2-apartment building that used to have an 80-something-year-old man in it now has 13 SUVs and trucks in the backyard. That's next door. So I know what it is to have parking issues. I live on South Prospect Street, but there are a lot more issues to be considered. One is the 9-month economy that we live in this town. The other is we should not be giving away everything in order to get private developers to house the university students. It just doesn't work. When I moved to town, we had plenty of smaller, neighborhoods with smaller houses or less expensive houses where families lived. That's just changed because there's so many more students that they have to go somewhere. And they will buy the least expensive, maybe not so nice houses, whatever, and cram the students in. That, if you think that parking is only the issue, you're wrong. It's the way universities, towns work. It's the responsibility of the university to pull its weight. Maybe asking the whole of the state to provide another dorm by state taxes, rather than money that we have to pay to our town to support our schools and everything. So it's not a simple issue, but I think it's important to have a discussion on this whole thing and not refer it tonight. I would like to do that, and I hope you will too.
Yes, right here in the second row.
Marilyn Blaustein, Precinct 6. I call the previous question.
Motion for the previous question has been made and seconded. If 2/3 of you come to a vote, if 2/3 of you vote in approval, we will then come to a vote on the motion to refer. But we have before us the motion for the previous question. It requires 2/3. All those in favor of the motion for the previous question, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. No. Moderator, here's 2/3. We now come to a vote on the motion to refer. A yes vote means you want to refer this back to the planning board. A no vote means the motion to refer is no longer before us and the main motion is before us. That main motion would require 2/3 to pass. All those in favor of the motion to refer, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. No. Moderators in doubt. Standing vote. I'll try it again. Well-modulated voice. All those in favor of the motion to refer, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. No. Moderator hears a majority, but if somebody else doubts it, we'll have a standing vote. Okay. And if 15 of you want a tally vote, then by town meeting rules, we have to have a tally vote. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep, now I see 15. This is tally vote number 8. Please write your name legibly. Stay in your row until the tellers have released your row. The yes votes are 105, the no votes are 60. Therefore, Article 25 has been referred back to the Planning Board. We now move on to Article 26. Before we do so, the Finance Committee should replace the Planning Board at the front table.
I'll be making a brief statement.
Folks can take their seats. We're now moving on to Article 26. And I call on Mr. Oldham to make the motion.
Jim Oldham, Precinct 5. I move in terms of the article.
Made and seconded, and it's my understanding that Sarah McKee is going to be speaking to the motion?
That's correct.
Yes, so Ms. McKee. Ms. McKee is not a town meeting member, but she is a registered voter in Amherst, and you should introduce yourself, and then you have 5 minutes to speak to the motion.
Thank you very much. Mr. Moderator, town officials, members of town meeting. Sarah McKee, Precinct 6. When I served on the Jones Library Board of Trustees, I knew that library employees were town employees and that many of them were part-time. It was only after leaving the board that I appreciated the gulf between town employees who have benefits and those who lack them. Town employees working 20 hours per week and up to full-time are on salary. They have a benefits package of which the town can justifiably be proud. Employees who work fewer than 20 hours per week get an hourly wage, and they get it only for the hours that they actually work. That's it. So I think that we owe a debt of gratitude to 2 part-time, unbenefited library employees who last year requested and steadfastly pursued earned paid sick leave for all town hourly employees. I give the town credit for working hard and coming up with a new benefit plan for hourly town employees. It comes out to about 1 hour of earned sick leave for every 16.5 hours worked. And some of that sick leave can be taken as personal leave. It's a very fine, flexible benefit. Yet the new town plan will cover only about 26 out of 156 hourly town employees. It will cover only 7 or 8 of more than 20 library hourly employees. First, the new town plan applies only to those who work year-round. To be eligible for sick leave under the new town plan, furthermore, an employee must work at least 520 hours in a given fiscal year, and then the leave will be credited as of July 1st in the following fiscal year and can be used then. Whatever you call the 520-hour threshold, under the plan, those who work only 519 hours in a given fiscal year will get no earned paid sick leave the following fiscal year. That does not seem fair. Increasingly, earned paid sick leave is seen as a basic human right. The 79.8% of Amherst voters who voted for the sick leave referendum last fall obviously agree. Employees should not have to beg for it. Martha Spiegelman and I and several others then petitioned for warrant article number 26. It would accord earned paid sick leave on the state principle of 1 hour for every 30 hours worked for town employees not covered by any more generous plan. Former library trustee presidents Molly Turner, Pat Holland, and I saw warrant article 26 as a step toward equal treatment for the hourly town employees. I've heard concerns about it. For instance, those whom the town plan excludes tend to be young and they don't need paid sick leave. Thank you. But all an employer should care about is whether an employee turns up as scheduled and does a good job. Then cost. Can we afford it? Several dozen town managers and employees got a 2% raise effective July 1st of this year. This will cost the town more than $80,000. Yet we should not emphasize cost when discussing benefits for low-paid workers. And some got their first raise in 5 or 6 years this past January when the state minimum wage was raised to $9 per hour. After consulting with town officials, and we would like to give credit to Town Manager John Musante and Human Resources Director Deb Bradway, and to the Finance Committee and others, we have nonetheless concluded that there may be a better way to keep faith with Amherst voters and to be fair to town employees than warrant Article 26 would provide. This is to give the town space between now and fall town meeting to expand its hourly employees benefit plan to more employees and not to try in this town meeting to enact warrant Article 26. We encourage all who are interested in ensuring paid sick leave for all hourly town employees to contact town meeting member Jim Oldham or else Martha Spiegelman or myself. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Kruger for the Select Board.
I move to refer Article 26 to the Town of Amherst Personnel Board.
Motion has been made and seconded. You have 5 minutes to speak to your motion.
The Select Board voted on April 6th, 3-0 with 2 absent, to recommend referral to the Personnel Board. as you just heard from the previous speaker, in 2014, almost 80% of Amherst voters supported a state referendum that provided sick leave benefits for all employees. Municipalities were exempt but had a local option to adopt this legislation. What we have before us tonight in Article 26 is something that closely mimics that legislation, but is different. Instead of adopting the state legislation, Amherst took an in-depth look at its part-time employees, in part prompted by a group of part-time workers at the Jones Library, and came up with a more comprehensive leave benefit plan that goes into effect this July 1st. The result is a change to the personnel bylaw that gives sick and personal leave benefits of up to 60 hours to part-time, year-round employees who average 10 or more hours a week. This was approved by the Select Board on February 23rd and will, as I said, be implemented July 1st. Note, employees that work 20 or more hours were already covered and receive prorated benefits. So I want to give you a little bit of background. Amherst's personnel benefits and policies are governed by the town's personnel bylaw, originally created by town meeting in 1952, with updates adopted in 1974 in compliance with state law, Chapter 41, Section 1088, and other updates and changes since then. This authorizes the Personnel Board to develop policies and issue rules and regulations for administering the personnel bylaw. Our bylaw covers classification, compensation, vacation, sick, holiday, and other leave benefits for all non-union, full-time, part-time, temporary, and seasonal employees. The Personnel Committee recommends personnel policies and practices to the Select Board for final approval. In February, when the Select Board approved the new benefit, we asked the Personnel Board to evaluate its implementation and to look at the other categories of employees who were not addressed by the new benefits policy, and then to report back to us. The group of town employees to be looked at includes seasonal, DPW, and Department of Public Works workers, golf course workers, multi-season LSSE coaches, and very part-time library workers. We expect the Personnel Board to report back to us this fall or winter. We currently do not know the full cost implications of Article 26. And I want to let you know, our Municipal Personnel Board does not cover the elementary schools, and more research is needed to understand the financial impacts on the Amherst School District, which has many temporary workers such as substitutes, translators, tutors, and crossing guards. We would recommend that the schools develop their own plan that fits their own diverse group of seasonal and part-time workers. We do not feel a one-size-fits-all approach is best for our town, but we are committed to fair and responsible treatment of all the town's employees. So for those reasons, the Select Board requests that you refer this article back to the Personnel Board for further work.
Thank you. And for the Finance Committee, Mr. Kubiak, I think.
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee also voted to endorse the notion to refer this back to the Personnel Board for essentially some of the reasons that the previous speaker mentioned. There are no costs known or estimated for the implementation of this plan. Those costs are not budgeted in this year's financial document. There's impact on the schools, which has not been included. We are in the position now to learn from the Attorney General, who's drafting her regulations for implementing the state's law. Some of those regulations that are being suggested by the Attorney General may, in fact, conflict with some of the language in this bylaw. And we also have the risk right now of creating yet another personnel system. So I think the position of the Finance Committee overall is it's best to refer this back to the Personnel Board, give them the opportunity to look to see how they can expand the work they've already done, and they've done some very good work. So we would encourage you to vote to refer.
Thank you. The motion on the floor is the motion to refer to the Personnel Board. That requires a majority vote. If that passes, then we've disposed of Article 26. If that fails, then the main motion in terms of the articles on the floor, which also requires a majority vote. I now call on Tony Butterfield, the chair of the Personnel Board.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good evening. And may I, Mr. Moderator, request an additional 2 minutes? I'm not sure that I can cover everything I need to say in the 3.
Without objection, I grant you an additional 2 minutes.
Thank you. Again, I'm Tony Butterfield, currently chair of the town's personnel board. I'm from Precinct 3, but I am not a member of town meeting. In case you are not aware, the Personnel Board has 5 members. They are generally appointed by the Select Board. The current members are Charlie Sherpa, a retired police chief. He was nominated by the town employees for that slot. A second slot is reserved for a member of the library trustees. That is occupied by Chris Hoffman, who is here and a member of town meeting. The other 3 include Ron Bell, retired assistant superintendent of the Amherst schools, Rebecca Woodard, a professor in the College of Education, and I myself am semi-retired in the Eisenberg School of Management at UMass. The board meets basically monthly. We have a posted agenda. Anyone can come. We also meet annually with the town's non-union employees to hear what's on their mind, listen to their concerns, and to share with them some of the things that are being developed on our end. As a previous speaker mentioned, our primary responsibility is developing personnel policies and procedures for the municipal employees who are not members of one of the town's 6 unions, and the Personnel Board is also not responsible for school system employees, although Article 26 would include them. Our general reaction to Article 26 is that it is a very well-meaning and well-intended benefit, but it seems to assume that all part-time jobs and all part-time employment relationships with the town are the same, which we think is not the case. We observed that the term part-time seems to include a remarkable range of employment relationships, and that treating this remarkable range as though they were all equal is in fact not fair to the other employees, and it does not reflect our desire to be an employer of choice. And that's why during the past fall we developed and recommended to the Select Board a different policy which has been approved and is scheduled to take effect this July 1st. How did we get to that point? Well, as has been mentioned, early in the fall, we met with a small group from the library who were requesting benefits for the part-time library employees. They did not specify which benefits. They actually had a fairly long list. We then communicated with the library trustees and the director of the library to get their input. We asked the town's human resources director, Deborah Radway, to find out what are other towns in Massachusetts doing with respect to benefits for their part-timers, and she actually conducted a survey. The results of her survey indicate, well, they're not doing much. A majority of towns in Massachusetts pay no benefits at all to their part-time employees. The minority who do, a majority of them set a 15-hour per week minimum in order to qualify for these benefits. We also began looking into, well, who are our part-time employees and what are their positions? What hours do they work? What tasks do they perform? Is it seasonal? Is it year-round? Do they work a regular schedule or fill in when someone is sick? And the answer is all of the above. In fact, last year the town employed 237 part-time employees. Over half of these are in the Leisure Services Department. The fire department has another 15% and the library 13%. These employees average 22 years of age and they have 1.5 years of service. We began to think that we need to develop a more focused benefit that would zero in on the positions and the employees who on a regular year-round basis perform important services that our town comes to expect on a regular basis. We weren't sure that call firefighters, sports referees, or even election workers who just became town employees this current year. So we developed the current benefit, which you have heard about. We recognize that the town employees who work part-time at least 20 hours already do receive prorated benefits, and that ballot for the initiative in November passed by a wide margin. So we were pleased to develop the package that we did, and we think it's a good one to start. We are certainly ready to monitor it and see how it works out, see how the employees who are covered by this new benefit, who, by the way, average 36 and a half years of age and have 3.5 years of service with the town. So we would basically like to let this new plan have a chance, and let's see how it works out. Let's talk with the employees affected. Let's talk with the supervisors to see if it creates any scheduling problems. We're pretty sure we didn't get it perfect the first time. We're very willing to listen to everyone's concerns about this. And if this motion to refer does come back to us, we will be happy to take a look at it. Thank you.
And Mr. Oldham, you've requested to speak.
Can I have the overhead?
Overhead, please.
Jim Oldham, Precinct 5. So as my colleague who made the motion indicated, we aren't going to oppose referral. However, accepting referral doesn't mean accepting all the assumptions that you've heard from previous speakers. 80% of Amherst voters voted to require businesses operating in our town to provide sick leave benefits for all their employees. Yet the new plan, the good new plan that you had, and it has some good elements to it, doesn't reach 80% of the town's part-time workers who work for less than 20 hours a week. Those two 80% don't jibe. So we are in favor of letting the town figure out a plan that works better for the town and not imposing the state's methodology, not imposing a one-size-fits-all approach. And we want to give the manager, his staff, and the committee's time to work on it. But that doesn't mean a year to see how this goes and feedback from supervisors and so on, and much less it shouldn't mean requiring employees, like the library employees had to do, to come forward and demand these rights. These should be rights. We should be offering them as a town to all our employees. If we're going to require them of the businesses in our town to make these, provide these rights, we certainly should offer them ourselves. And our schools should join the town in doing that. So on the screen, we've suggested several items that we think are key. Perhaps we accept that there may be certain positions that it's not appropriate for because they are, in a sense, in one way or another, on call or substitute positions. But any sick leave benefits should effectively be extended to all employees of the town and of the schools unless there's a position-specific, articulated, and functional rationale for excluding them. So we shouldn't start by excluding and force each group of employees to come forward and advocate for their rights. We need the town to create a plan that reaches everyone. And the current plan has several other flaws, including that it takes a year before you can start collecting benefits, and that so it takes a year to accrue the benefits, and therefore you can't start collecting them. If you get hired at the beginning of the fiscal year, it could be entire 12 months, as compared to our other employees who can start taking leave 6 months after they get hired. So I'm out of time, so I'll just end by saying, accept referral, but please, we don't intend to wait a year or 2 years, and we will be working with the Personnel Board and the manager, and we hope not to have to come back with this article in the fall. But that's the option we have if we don't have something else before then. Thank you.
And Martha Spiegelman has requested to speak. I don't know, is she here? I guess not. Oh, does not wish to speak. I'm sorry. Thank you. In that case, Deborah Radway, the Director of Human Resources, is asked to speak.
Hi, I'm Deb Redway. I'm your Director of Human Resources. And the first thing I want to say is, I hear you. And I pledge, furthermore, to work with Jim and Martha and the folks who've been promoting earned sick leave, and that's 79% of Amherst voters. We hear you. We know we can make our plan better. We need a little time to work it out. So I'm going to start with that. The next thing I wanted to do is just tell you a little bit about who our part-time workforce is. And I'm sorry, Mr. Moderator, I forgot to ask. I might possibly need an additional minute.
Since you didn't ask, we'll have a really quick vote. Grant her an additional minute. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, please say no. You've got it.
Okay. In calendar year 2014, we have, wow, why does it say value? We have 237 part-time workers. That's what the blue one down at the bottom said. That doesn't include the senior tax work-off participants, and it doesn't include the election workers. Of those, 130, or 54%, didn't work 90 days in 2014. Under any of the scenarios, under any of the plans, they didn't work long enough to become eligible for sick leave. An additional 44 fall under that functional exclusion area, I think, that Jim was referring to, which are the call firefighters and the outside detail police workers. These folks can't work only when they're called to do so. They don't have any regular schedule. The call firefighters actually get an incentive in addition to their pay for showing up. So it seems kind of contradictory to then also pay them when they're sick. So that's something we need to take another look at. So that leaves us with really talking about 92 people. This is all based on calendar year 14 again. And of those 92 people, there's 66 people that are really kind of in the zone that we need to take another look at. These are the seasonal DPW, conservation, and golf course workers. They're the alternate building and electrical inspectors, the senior center van drivers, the library shelvers, and the very part-time circulation desk staff who don't necessarily want more hours, but have been there for years and years and years and perform an incredibly valuable service to the town. And also the multi-season LSSE workers. These are the folks that I think we need to really take another look at. And in addition to those 66, we have the 26 folks who, in 2014 anyway, are eligible for benefits. The library circulation desk workers who are working as many hours as they can get, the senior center nurse and lunch manager, the plumbing and gas inspector, transfer station attendants, LSSE after school and summer camp staff, police records clerks, and the part-time parking enforcement officers. All these folks are working at least 10 hours a week. Did we get it perfect? I don't know. But again, I'm committed to working with you on it. And the last thing I want to say is also covered by the state sick leave law, in addition to the people who were previously mentioned, are the election workers, 101 of them. They work, bless them, 2 very long days a year. The senior tax work-off participants, outside detail police officers, the substitute teachers who are already filling in for teachers when they're sick, tutors, crossing guards, and other elementary school staff. And it doesn't include staff employed by the district, and they really need to take a better look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion before us is the motion to refer, requires a majority vote. Is there discussion? Yes, second row from the back there.
Yes, hi, Carol Gray, Precinct 7. So when this, I assume it'll get referred, I just hope that our personnel board will really prioritize giving benefits to part-time workers. I was looking online and I see the United States is the only developed country that doesn't have a national requirement that workers get access to paid sick leave. The lack of a law leaves nearly 40% of Americans without access to leave. This is fundamental. As a society and as a community, we should prioritize the people who need our help most. And if you look in your Finance Committee book, you'll see on page 10, our reserves are at $9 million. That's pretty good. We've just committed to an economic development director at almost $85,000 a year, which over 12 years will be $1 million. I think we can afford to prioritize giving sick leave to the people who have the least money in our society. And you know, they say that the way you judge a society is by how it treats the most vulnerable people in its midst. And to me, this is definitely something we should pass as soon as possible.
Yes, the gentleman in the back of the aisle there.
Leo Maley, Precinct 5. I want to thank the petitioners for bringing this forward. If memory serves me right, I believe I brought a petition article to town meeting, I think it was in 1998, that addressed the issue of, at that point, calling on the town to offer the same benefits to same-sex domestic partners. At that time, of course, we discriminated on the issue of marriage for town employees, because I thought that was that was an equal justice issue, and was very pleased to find out that the town was actually starting to do that. But it's an example there where Amherst was extremely rare in stepping forward to do that, not only among private employers, but among municipalities. But the notion of bringing this forward, I think, should be greatly applauded, and I thank the people who have taken the lead on this. One previous speaker mentioned the issue, though, of, well, let me say one thing first. I'm very glad that the state minimum wage increases are not voluntary for municipalities. At least individual towns will not be able to offer wages to part-time or full-time employees lower than the state minimum wage. So we did great there. But on this issue, here in Amherst, we've taken certain leads in terms of employees who work part-time and who are young. A previous speaker referred to the age of the part-time employees who get benefits currently is approximately 36, and the age of those who don't at 22. Back in 2002, as an employee and a union activist at the University of Massachusetts, we organized and were approached by undergraduate residence assistants, very part-time, undergraduates who were not covered by any benefits. They sought union recognition, and it was denied. We won that. We won that actually through a very intensive fight that resulted in 31 people being arrested, that resulted in a civil disobedience action, that resulted in the entire congressional delegation weighing in. And I must say that was the first recognized undergraduate employee union in the U.S. Another one just happened a couple of weeks ago. Those people are much happier, and I have encountered actually parents of people who have worked here as undergrads, as TAs. So the issue of age, that's entirely irrelevant, I think. And so and also the fact that these part-timers, particularly the younger ones, tend to make the lowest wage. It won't cost much because their hourly sick leave will be at a much lower rate than folks higher on the schedule. It's a basic issue of equality.
Further discussion before a vote? Yes, second row right here.
Okay, can you hear me now? Great. My name is Emmanuel Morales, Precinct 8, and I just want to make a couple of quick comments. I do imagine that this will probably be referred to the Personnel Board. I just want to stress to everyone within town meeting that we should be careful when using age in determining the health of an individual. I am 23 years old. I am independent. I don't have any parents. I'm unemployed. I have type 2 diabetes, among other problems. I may not look like I have health problems, but that is no excuse to use age to determine whether or not paid sick leave is important. It should be important for everyone across the spectrum. Many young people are also single parents with children who do get sick. And as one previous speaker said, we should judge a society by how we treat the most vulnerable, excuse me, it's kind of late, and that includes young people who do get sick, and many of them who do have dependents, and many of them who are considered working class people. So I urge everyone in town meeting and everyone in the town of Amherst to consider these points in deliberating anything related to earned sick leave for municipal employees. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Musanti.
Yeah, I want to acknowledge and thank a previous speaker who encouraged a referral of this article back to the Personnel Board. I join with our HR Director, Ms. Radway, and the hardworking members of the Personnel Board, your neighbors who are appointed, who led by Tony Butterfield, doing an outstanding job. They spent many, many months so far looking at this issue and having it be a data-driven effort and a pledge to continue looking at it, to try to refine it, to make it better. One of the interesting things that I learned along the way, all of us in our various town positions belong to statewide associations. So there's a town managers group, there's a public works group, there's a human resources group. And at a recent human resources directors meeting, 200 or so communities represented across the state, the Amherst person asked for a show of hands on the heels of the state referendum ballot question results. How many communities so far are even exploring whether to accept earned leave for their part-time employees, which they're not required to under that referendum? Not a single hand went up in that room within the last 45 days or so. Amherst, I think, is justifiably proud of trying to be progressive and do the right thing. We have a policy that's been developed first in the Commonwealth. Personnel Board is pledged to keep looking at it. You heard from the current president of the Jones trustees when asked from the floor of town meeting during the library budget. They will be looking at it. So we're going to keep at it. I wouldn't worry about whether it's not going to be looked at or not. Thank you.
Ready to come to a vote? Yes, there. Fourth row on the aisle.
Mary Wentworth, Precinct 5. I'll call the question.
Motion for the previous question has been made and seconded, and there were other hands, so I'm going to accept it. If 2/3 of you come to a vote, we will then come to a vote on the motion to refer. All those in favor of the motion for the previous question, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. No. Moderator hears 2/3. We now come to a vote on the motion to refer Article 26 to the Personnel Board. This requires a majority vote. All those in favor of the motion to refer, please say aye. Opposed, please say no. Moderator hears a majority. It passes. We now move on to Article 27. And I call on Mr. O'Connor to make a motion.
Vince O'Connor, Precinct 1. Mr. Moderator, I'm going to read the motion because I think it will. I move that the town meeting requests that the Select Board and Town Manager direct the Superintendent of Public Works and/or Town Engineer to prepare and submit to the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, District 2 and Boston offices a request and plan to reopen the Mill Street Bridge in front of the Puffers Pond Dam for unsignalized, one-lane, two-way traffic while the town awaits reconstruction of that bridge.
I hear a second. You may speak to your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. There are a number of public safety reasons why I have made this motion and presented this article for the town meeting's consideration. The first is that the bridge has been closed for a while. A plan has been developed to replace it. When a petition was presented to the Public Works Committee separate from the discussion of the bridge, the response of the Superintendent of Public Works was to say not going to happen, and we received no real discussion from the Public Works Committee. So I felt really obliged and part of myself and my neighbors to bring this matter before the town meeting. The closure of the bridge has forced everyone in North Amherst who is on that side of the bridge to go through the North Amherst intersection. That intersection is problematic. It is going to be looked at this summer by the Planning Board, and hopefully the Planning Board will have at least one of their meetings in North Amherst. But at this time, that intersection is problematic. There may be some simple and straightforward ways to resolve the difficulties at that intersection, but funneling all the traffic through that intersection, especially when there's going to be construction work on Pine Street and maybe intersection work there, is a bad idea, because if that intersection is blocked, you either have to go around and down 116 into the center of town, or you have to drive over Pulpit Hill Road over the top on a basically one-lane dirt road. So funneling traffic through that intersection is a bad idea. Second, whatever the likelihood of what is set for a load limit on that bridge, at least police vehicles will hopefully be able to get across the bridge along with our own personal vehicles. And they currently have to go all the way around, as do all the ambulance and other public safety vehicles. One of the problems about funneling traffic through the North Amherst intersection is many people, having been directed in that thing, continue to town through the university. One of the reasons that in 1978 the Tropics programs reoriented the downtown streets so that North Pleasant Street became sort of a side street for a block, and East Pleasant Street became the main street, was to take traffic that was going to Cushman, Leverett, and parts of North Amherst away from the university and out East Pleasant Street. The closure of that bridge has in fact forced some of that traffic to go through the university. That is a public safety issue. We would like, while the bridge is being in the reconstruction queue, to have the bridge reopened on the basis that I've suggested. So those are the issues. The intersection in North Amherst, funneling people through it, funneling people through the university, and access by some public safety vehicles, whatever, and that will depend on the load limits set by the state. So let me say what my understanding of the process is. You have to make the request in writing. The select board has to. They have to prepare a plan showing how the streets approaching the bridge on both sides will be, what signs will be placed, and how the street will be marked. There'll have to be a stop sign on each side of the bridge so that traffic can proceed one by one, which is currently, before the bridge was closed, what usually happened because it's a fairly narrow bridge. The decision about reopening the bridge will be made by the Mass DOT. They are not going to accept any, you could have 10 of the greatest engineering firms in the country say the bridge is wonderful, and Mass DOT is going to send out their own bridge people to look at that bridge because they're going to make the decision, as they do with all bridges in Amherst, and it's going to be their engineers that inform them as to what decision to make. No engineer that we hire are going to be taken at face value by the Mass DOT. So the process from our part is simple: a plan and a written request, inexpensive because the engineering is going to be done by the state, and it may lead to, at least temporarily while the bridge is awaiting reconstruction, a safety valve getting traffic out of the North Amherst intersection and away from the university. Thank you.
And I call on Ms. Kruger for the Select Board.
Mr. Moderator, I asked for 2 additional minutes. Oh, I thought I had 3, so it's showing 5. So I don't.
You get.
And if I get 2 additional, then I'll be back to 5.
You get 3, and you're asking for 2 additional?
Yes.
Without objection, you may continue.
Okay, and maybe I won't need them. The Select Board voted on April 6th, 4-0 with 1 absent, to recommend dismissal of this article. The Select Board heard the case from the petitioner for reopening the Mill Street Bridge in North Amherst on a temporary basis. And we recognize the inconvenience, the severe inconvenience the bridge closure has had for many North Amherst residents. However, upon review of information supplied by the Public Works Committee, the Superintendent of Public Works, and the Massachusetts Department of Transportation's June 2011 Bridge Inspection Report, we do not feel it would be practical or safe to reopen the bridge for vehicular travel as requested by this article. Following the Mass DOT report, the Mill Street Bridge was closed except for pedestrian and bicycle use. We expect the state to begin working on rebuilding this bridge from the bottom up starting in 2017. The new bridge represents about $2 million in bridge construction and will be 100% state funded. For the town to temporarily reopen the bridge to cars, we'd first need to present a structural analysis to Mass DOT and a fully engineered plan. This alone will cost about $10,000 to $15,000. The needed work to open just 1 lane would be in the best guess range of $60,000. But even assuming it was worth it to spend this on work that would need to be ripped out once the bridge replacement project begins, we have determined that serious safety issues remain, and I have attempted to illustrate the situation. So I want to show you the existing roadbed on the bridge is 18 feet wide. And there are 5 steel girders underneath, and I'm not saying I have them exactly spaced right, but for illustrative purposes. So we have compromised supports. We know that the number 1 girder is failed, the number 5 girder has failed, and also from the report, the number 2 girder is all 3 of these are rated as severe, major deficiency, need urgency of repair. So I want to compare. So what's an 18-inch width look, 18-foot wide bridge look like? So for example, the Norwotic Rail Trail is 10 feet wide. The road bed that we would have after the work is done to make this available for temporary travel will be 6 feet wide. So we're using 3 of the girders. 1 would need to be replaced. That's why the cost that I quoted was so high. So we start with 9 feet, and then we add 2 18-inch wide railings that are required, and they're 3 to 4 feet in height. Then we looked up the width of certain vehicles. So for example, this is a Subaru Forester. It's 5.9 feet wide. I wasn't able to nudge this to get the half-inch on either side. That could potentially fit on this bridge. But then we have a Toyota Sienna minivan, which is 78 feet wide. It will not fit on the one-way travel bridge as proposed by this article. So for those reasons, we have voted to dismiss this article.
And I now call on Mr. Rosnoy from the Planning Board.
Mr. Moderator, a point of order. There's no motion on the floor to dismiss, is there?
That is correct. The motion on the floor is the motion in terms of the article.
I'd like to move to refer this article to the Public Works Committee and the Planning Board.
Public Works Committee and the Planning Board, is that who you want to refer to?
That's correct.
Okay, and that motion has been made and seconded. You may speak to your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm speaking in place of our chair of the board, David Weber, who's gone. We had quite a discussion at our board about this bridge article, and even though the planning board technically does not have jurisdiction over roads, the select board is the body in town which has jurisdiction over roads. Of course, the Public Works Department has main responsibility for the roads. Nevertheless, there are some points that the board brought up that we thought were important for further study, and that this article has some merits. Some of those points are, one, that the bridge is an essential link, obviously, both ways between North Amherst and Town Center, and it should be opened as soon as possible, and in any event will have an effect on the 5-way intersection in North Amherst, studies for which have already begun, some of which you've heard about. The petitioner, by the way, referred to Planning Board considering what to be done with the 5-way intersection, and that's not entirely correct. There is a joint public hearing scheduled, I believe it's June 27th, but that date might be wrong, for the 24th, thank you, for the Planning Board and the Public Works Committee to have a joint public hearing to receive comments and input about that 5-way intersection in North Amherst. We encourage all of you to attend, especially those local residents. Another point that was brought up, you may recall the transportation study, which was presented to you at the very beginning of this town meeting. The Transportation Planning Task Force consultant and other sources are clear that narrow roads frequented by pedestrians and bicyclists are perceived as dangerous. A one-way road is only safe for speeding cars. Granted, here the petitioner is proposing stop signs on both ends. Nevertheless, we know what happens when cars come upon stop signs, and a one-way road was seen as very dangerous. The board also considered the engineering and structural concerns raised by the Department of Public Works in the Public Works report. Nevertheless, we voted to recommend referral by a vote of 5-0 with 2 absent.
The motion on the floor now is a motion to refer to the Public Works Committee and the Planning Board. And now, is there a statement from the Finance Committee? Ms. Ratner?
This is not, our statement is not regarding referral or not, because we voted before all this came about. So the Finance Committee voted 5-0 with 2 absent not to recommend this article. The state is expected to repair this bridge in the future, and at this point it is not safe to use and could be a liability for the town. Any temporary repairs and time spent on those repairs would be costly. Thanks.
Thank you. And this vote, so it's on the floor before us, is a motion to refer. If that passes, we've disposed of Article 27. If that fails, we go back to the main motion in terms of the article. I now call on Christine Gray-Mullen, the chair of the Public Works Committee.
Christine Gray-Mullen, Chair of the Public Works Committee.
Talk really close to the microphone.
And also a member of the Transportation Task Force. We, as a committee, have met at length, and at our last committee meeting, we actually heard from 3 of the petitioners, and they spoke at length. And the committee was unanimous in its suggestion and motion that this not be done for many reasons, but the most important to us is that it will cost money to fix this bridge. And we are already so lacking in funds to fix roads and other projects that need to be done. And we would rather have any funds that do become available to go to those projects. And we also have the transportation plan that has just been approved, and that will also require funds. And the big picture is that this bridge is going to be rebuilt in the next couple of years, and this money spent would be for a temporary solution. And as an engineer, I just have to say, when you look at what was previously, how it would be repaired and how narrow that width of road would be, it's just not even a feasible thing. And safety would be nil with cars coming both ways, with pedestrians and bicyclists all sharing this space in a very rural road that is dark and not with poor sighting lines for vehicles. So with that, that's where we stand.
Thank you. Yes, your point of order. Wait for a microphone, please.
Since this is a report from her committee, I didn't hear any vote or discussion or anything about this motion to refer to the Public Works, this petition.
Okay, we can ask, did your committee discuss the motion to refer as opposed to a motion to just defeat it?
Our last meeting was the beginning of April, so that was not on the table at the time. So we voted to just tell the select, because we make motions to the select board, just to no. And there were, at the time, 3 members, so 3, it was unanimous, and the 2 others voiced their support through email to us.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Yes, down here, second row.
James Barat, Precinct 1. 1,
if the state comes around sometime in 2017 and actually does repair the bridge, that's a big if. 2, if the intersection in North Amherst is ever repaired and the bridge is not fixed, North Amherst will be cut off from downtown unless they go all the way out to, 116, going towards, well, they'd have to go north out of town quite a bit to get onto 116 in order to get into town. So something is going to have to give, or North Amherst is going to be cut off from downtown. There'll be no fires service. There'll be no ambulance service. We'll be cut off totally.
Is there, you may stay forward. If you want to speak, you can ask to be recognized, but you don't have to, and you can stay forward here if you want. Is there further discussion? Yes, against the wall there in the purple.
Felicity Callahan, Precinct 9. I just have a quick question. Is this a referral to the Public Works Department or the Public Works Committee?
The motion is to refer to the Public Works Committee and the Planning Board. That's the motion before us. Yes, Mr. O'Connor.
Vince O'Connor, Precinct 1. So I'd like to speak in favor of the motion to refer to the Planning Board. One, the Planning Board is going to have 2 meetings this summer. I would hope that at least one of them will be scheduled, or a second public hearing will be scheduled for North Amherst so that people can attend by walking and so forth, rather than trying to find a place to park around Town Hall. And I do think that when the entirety of the situation is really outlined, we may have a referral. We may have the Planning Board asking the Select Board to do what this article proposes to do, and especially after having listened to a very long town meeting, and some of which was very focused on the Planning Board's decision-making process. So I do want to say that the engineering, I mean, I don't know why we need a $10,000 to $15,000 engineering study to do something that apparently somebody has already done, and in-house. And I just invite, I know that a lot of people walk and come to Puffer's Pond and so forth, and next time bring your 25-foot tape measure, and when you happen to walk across the bridge, you may want to pull it off your belt and measure the road width. Last time I measured, it was at least 20 feet, and I've lived there a long time. So, but I think the referral is the best solution, because the Planning Board has heard a lot from town meeting about their concerns, and I think that they have placed the concern that this bridge has in the context in which it needs to be placed, which is the overall impact on North Amherst. So thank you very much.
Yes, down in the front there.
Denise Barbarette, Precinct 9. I believe that the bridge was closed in the summer of 2011. Can anybody verify that? 2011 or 2012?
Mr. Mooring?
Guilford Mooring, Superintendent of Public Works. Yes.
2011. Okay. And I remember that because that was how I used to get to work. And then I couldn't get to work that way, so I had to start going along Bridge Street and Leverett Road. So that's 2011 to 2015. That's 4 years. 2017, when reconstruction of the bridge will happen, that's another 2 years. So that's 6 years. And then my final question is, how many years will it be before the reconstruction actually finishes on the bridge? So what's the total of years that this bridge is going to be closed?
Mr. Mooring?
So everyone knows who Mass DOT is, don't they? So I can only tell you the estimate. The plan is that they start construction in 2017. Considering what's going to happen to the bridge, it's going to be a 2-year job. So it's going to be 2 construction years. By 2019, it'll be open. So that's the best bet right now. The only way to make this go faster is for town meeting to come up with the money to do it themselves, and for us to move the bridge faster than Mass DOT will. There's 2 things that are going to drive this project that's going to cause problems for the bridge. One is that there's a severe scour issue at the bottom of the bridge. So that has nothing to do with the deck above that you ride on. The scour issue is eating away at the abutments, and the abutments have to be changed. To change the abutments, we have to go to the Conservation Commission and to the Corps of Engineers and get permits from them. And based on the new stream crossing standards, that'll set how far back the bridge is and how much longer the bridge is. So that's going to be a requirement. The second issue is the fact that the roadway is only 30 feet wide for the layout of the road, 30 feet. So we have to come to an agreement with the Conservation Commission that we're making this pathway, which is on a bridge that has vehicle traffic on the public way and on a conservation property, to make this whole thing fit, or else it's not going to fit, period. So those 2 things also have to be resolved. But to make it go any faster, if you want this project to go faster, the town has to come up with the money.
Motion before us is one to refer. Is there further discussion? Yes, right in the center there. Motion, previous question has been made and seconded. If 2/3 of you vote yes, we will then come to a vote on the motion to refer. All those in favor of the motion for the previous question, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. Moderator hears 2/3. We now come to a vote on the motion to refer Article 27 to the Public Works Committee and the Planning Board. This is a majority vote. All those in favor of the motion to refer, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Now call on Ms. Brewer for a motion.
I move to consider Article 28.
Motion has been made and seconded. You may speak to your motion.
I know everyone loves to leave at 9:50. I get that. Really, I do. But we have 3 articles left, and we are a little concerned about making quorum on Wednesday night. And of course, those of you who've been here before know that if we don't have quorum Wednesday night, town meeting's really not over. And so we need to be able to finish all the articles. So one way we could do that is we could keep going tonight through 1 or more of the 3 articles. Each time we would have to ask permission. If we adjourn tonight, then we know for sure we're coming back Wednesday, and we need to have a quorum very soon after 7 o'clock to get going on that.
Is there discussion before we come to a vote? Pardon me? No, we're not doing it. We're deciding whether or not we're going to consider Article 28 tonight. And this is a majority vote. If a majority vote yes, we will move forward and consider Article 28. If you do not vote yes, Ms. Brewer will make an alternate motion. All those in favor of hearing Article 28, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. No. Nope, did not get it. So the motion to continue tonight failed. Before I call Ms. Brewer, I just want to tell people again, please arrive promptly at 7. You owe it to the petitioners and the rest of town meeting who still has articles to be heard. And Ms. Brewer, will you make a motion?
I move to adjourn to Wednesday, May 20th, 2015.
Motion has been made and seconded. Come to an immediate vote. All those in favor of the motion to adjourn till Wednesday night at 7, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. We are adjourned.